Good morning, good day to you, as usual, whenever and wherever you listen to this series of knowledge seekers from a Spaceship Institute of the Keshe Foundation. We welcome you back, and as usual, we set the scene to start understanding more about ourselves. Now that we know our soul, our physicality, and everything else is an amalgamation of the fields of the creation. And the one which part of it, which is the stronger, becomes our central energy fields. We call it the soul, and weaker and in interaction of the dimension of other fields becomes our physicality and the soul of physicality. And I'm sure in the future we'll learn more about subdivisions of the divisions of the cell in a different way, as we know in the matter state of physicality. The teaching of today is interesting as we go back, but in a deeper way, to understand more about the science of creation. And this become in a way important as tomorrow we start the first phase of transmutation. Tomorrow, collectively, many of you who have been part of this monthly meeting will put you through a totally new system. Energy fields which interacts only on the level of the soul of the man. And then it's how you interact with it. And later on, tomorrow or the following days, we'll take a couple of those people who are supposed to be the first transmuters into a different dimension of the what we call field of strength, to see how they can grow to the what we call the phases of transmutation. And by June, we try to see if at least these two can transmute, and to what level they can, and where there's a pitfalls in our structure of the work and our systems that we can get ready for what we call the final phase. But to understand the totality, we go back again to cosmic rays, back again to what we call the creators of the creation. We call it, as I said, cosmic rays, and then we become part of the rays of the earth. We usually see it as a light, daylight or whatever, but on the other side, as we said, we go back to universal rays. And then above the universal rays is the ray of the creator, which as these fields, this field singularity travels in the depth of the world of the creation of itself, in a slowing down and interacting, and then interacting will lead to the creation of the universes. And then the fields of these universes interacting leads creation of the galaxies, what we call, and the stars, solar systems, and then the soul of the man and the rest. So what is important for us as knowledge seekers is to be open to the understanding of totality and do not draw a line, and be ready to expand our knowledge, our own understanding, without any prejudices. Once we become prejudiced, then it's time when we stop. When we draw, that's the limit, it cannot be any further. That means it's a limit of our understanding, it's a limitation of our comprehension. So in reality, if the what we call field of carbon 12, and then you have the fields of carbon 14, which is cosmic rays, and then you go into interaction of the fields, that in that process they're interacting with each other in a dimension of the totality, lead to what we call in the physics of today crystallization as a crystal, but against crystal, which means it has no dimension. But the difference between a crystal in a life form and a crystal in a matter form is a slight difference. The crystals, as is the diversity of the fields from gases, has a heartbeat. So has the soul of a stone, has a heart. For us, it's important to find out that heartbeat of the soul. What takes it over? What brings that condition to understanding? And we see in our technology, when you join us in these monthly sessions, more and more the interaction of the three phases of the matter, the what we call the vegetation or energy of them, or the matter energy, and then the energy of the what we call life, which is like human body. The interesting point is when these interact and the soul of physicality interacts, we see something very interesting. We see the totality of the what we call the line of connection. And when they come together, when these three field forces of the matter, vegetation, and what we call animal kingdom come together, we see something very, very interesting. And this is where the totality, the information gives us a lot of insight in how we have entered the three dimension. Which means if you put all the what we call field strength of these three conditions which body of the man is made of, bone, then you have the structure of the food which is within the man, and then you have the cellular structure of the man, and all having a soul. This will give us an interesting position in many, many applications. And we can see this in a way when the soul of the man, the soul of physicality of the man, and the physicality of the man come together, gives us the same kind of condition. This gives us a totality of understanding. You've seen these pictures we shared before, and in so many cases, we see it on the rapid way. When the physical body of the man comes into connection, comes into interaction with the soul of the man and the physicality of the man, this gives us, in a dimensional way, a shape of a sphere, which we know at that point the man has passed the position. And in some test results, we see how the soul takes over and how the physicality, in a way, subdues and then follows. And together, they make a beautiful system. And it tells us that you, as knowledge seekers, going through the process, have reached the point of maturity, have reached the understanding of totality. And this brings us an amazing picture. In what we call structures. When we see this picture appears in the graphs, where we see the soul of the man, the soul of physicality of the man, and the physicality of man bear all the combination of the fields of the matter state, the what we call the vegetation state, and the animal kingdom, which is the cell body physicality of the man together, we get this figure. But when you look at this, when we see this in our systems running, it means that the man has reached a point of transmutation. Everything is in a field matter. Everything is ready to move on. When you get this picture, it means you're still in doldrum of trying to find out the physicality and what we call separation or expansion of the soul. But when we see this picture, spherical, the reason that most of or all of the celestial objects are spherical is this reason. What do you see? It's the first time scientifically we can explain even why the plasma takes a spherical shape. Why stars are in a spherical shape. Not only due to rotation, but due to creating combination of the field strength, which each one has its own heartbeat. And in that heartbeat sits the structure of matter state, which is embedded inside the star, the what we call a life state, and what you call the vegetation state, or the same as physicality, the soul of physicality, or the what we call the soul of the system. And when you see a picture like this, scientifically, this explains a lot of things to us. And we look tomorrow in these tests to see how more spherical you make it. And when it squeezes itself to a near enough sphere, it means all the knowledge seekers are ready for transmutation. It means all the energies has come together. And this is why we separate two knowledge seekers, as too many of you fall in the pitfall of believing in what you're trying to do or what you see, and you go back to the matter state. You try to control it physically. And then we see this picture quite often. I think in some of the pictures we've shown before, you've seen this appears as a sphere and then suddenly always has a peak behind it. And whenever you get a peak, you see the physicality, which is the yellow line, takes over. Means I cannot trust the soul. I cannot believe I can do such a thing. Am I worthy of being able to? And very interesting is that how suddenly the energy increases, reaches a peak, reaches a point. And these, when we get these data, it shows how much knowledge seekers are ready to go. And then they get frightened of themselves. We see this in a medical application. As I explained to many doctors before, we see people getting better. They change their life through the wellness centers or systems they use or process of the case foundation they use to get in a wellness side. And then when you ask them the question about it, they say, no, this doesn't happen. The fear of confirming, yes. And this is the same problem we see here. And in a way, when you understand, when you what we call the data, then you will see how so many of you are ready to transmute. Except that you have the fear of, am I worthy of? Would I be able to achieve such a thing? And then we see what happens. How, when you build your confidence, in a way trusting in yourself, that you don't need any intermediaries, you move to these new phases. And in a way, you flip over to what we call another dimension, another position, another understanding of your own existence. That, yes, I can transmute. I can transfer the fields of my existence, and I'm not afraid of it because I can bring it back. I can create it to be. And then what is interesting with many of you is that your own success, your own combination of the fields of the work comes to become the process of demise. In a way, you stop the process. In a way, you control the expansion of the soul. Trust in a higher order, what we call mechanism, higher order, what we call process of expansion. And we see this quite often with you knowledge seekers. And amazing enough, you keep on repeating it. We see it in the crowds of you, when you're many of you, and we see this with when it's individuality of you. And how the what we call the process would lead to another process of what I call self-inflicting division. Self-inflicting division of what we call division is soul from the physicality and physicality from the soul. And we see this. And this brings us a lot of knowledge. And today's teaching is primarily about these kind of conditions. Because you as knowledge seekers, many of you are ready to go, are ready to, in a way, become part of that what we call universal community, to become part of the existence of the totality. And it's a day like this, before we bring you as knowledge seekers to understand the totality, is our job to bring you to see, is our job to make you to understand where and how this will happen. In this picture, it gives us a beautiful indication of how you see yourselves. And this is important for those of you who join us tomorrow in the sessions, and you will understand a continuous field. You see this beginning of the creation of the circle. And then everybody collapses. And then you go through a matter phase. And then soul and soul of physicality tries to come together to go through the phase of the transmutation to the soul. But as you see, again, the matter state, because this is where you find yourself safe. All of you, all the knowledge seekers, humanity, in next months and years of coming time, will go through this and has to understand how much is the difference, and what is the difference, and why does man jumps back into what we call conversion of the souls into the physicality? Is it fear? Are you afraid of? Or is it, am I worthy of? Those of you who have no hesitation will go through the system. You'll go through the whole structure of the transmutation. And if I show you another picture, you can see it in a more, what we call, beautiful way. How the soul of the physicality is entrapped inside the physical, where the soul cannot pass the dimension of physicality. This, what we call the image we see, it shows how much the man is physical. And this comes at the process when the man says, I have no physicality. And you can see the other dimension in the same process, that physicality doesn't play. And as I said, then you see the same, continuously jumping. This jump And going back to physicality is like you do something and you feel home, you go back home. You stay home because home is safe. And man has to learn that the home is the soul of the creation, not the physicality of the man. Not having fear of interacting with the fields of the creation than with the physicality of the man. In tomorrow's session, we will create a condition for those of you who will be in the session to be able to let the physicality go. To, in a way, not to go, but not to have a fear that you cannot manifest yourself in a dimension of physicality. In how you bring about the condition of everything together to be carried. What is interesting in these pictures is that if I ask you to all take all your clothes on, just sit with the bikini, nothing with you. All of you who sit in these pictures, you should are in your clothes, there's a belt, there's money in the pocket and everything else. You see a different image than this. Some of you are eating, some of you are drinking, some of you are asleep during the session. And then that interacts with what we see on the graphs. And we understand and we can eliminate most of these, but it has to be there because when I transmute you, I have to take you with the clothes. I have to take you with something which you feel safe to be in. As I said once to one of the knowledge seekers, going through a transmutation is like, in a way, being fully dressed and jumping across into a free fall from a height where all your clothes can rip off, all your belonging can be taken away from you during the fall, and then you land at the end, at the bottom, safe and sound. But you could have no clothes on. Everything is lost during the fall from the top. And this is what you knowledge seekers have to accept in coming into the sessions from tomorrow. Is and what will be and what shall be, but in a way, be not afraid of how you land at the bottom of the fall. We're getting to the point in the development that even those of you who go through a full transportation systems in the future have to be ready for transmutation. If you want to experience what is outside this cage of physicality, I'm traveling as a UFO, a spaceship, whatever you want to call it. Unless you are what I call expats. You go to another country, you create your own group, you only eat your own food, doesn't matter, you're 10,000 kilometers from home. Why have you come this way if you're going to be in your own village? Why do you come to the space when you still want to be in a UFO, you still want to be in a flying machine? You cannot go to Bahamas with a tie and a suit, go on the seat on the beach with a tie and a suit, and try to enjoy the pleasures of the water. You take your clothes off, you change in a swimming suit, and you go in the water to test it, to see how good you are in that environment. This will be with the man in the space. When we start showing the flight system to the moon, you want to go to the moon and sit in the system? Don't you want to touch that sand? Don't you want to feel how it feels to be what we call a citizen of this new environment? So you understand, when the man, even when we taught you about the flight system, at the end of it, you have to go through a transmutation if you want to see where you are, how it feels. It's like going to China with a bunch of Koreans and you eat Korean food every day in China. Why did you come to China? Just being a cone of sand? This is what you, as knowledge seekers, have to understand to gain confidence that we lose these pictures and we reach what we call a spherical shape tomorrow, where the soul of physicality and the physicality of man in all three dimensions of creation, which is the matter state, solid state, which is the bone, the what we call field strength, which is the amino acids of your whatever you call it, the lung, the liver, or whatever, and the energy of the soul of the man all work together to create that spherical shape, to create that what I have is yours. When it's a sphere, everybody takes, there is no end. And when you look at these pictures, when I see these things, brings me so much understanding how much our knowledge seekers are afraid of their own image. You're afraid of your own shadow. When it comes to what I call putting your knowledge into practice. Understanding the control of the fields of the existence and using it to travel in the dimension of the field of the environment and the universe is what we are pushing at, what we are pushing you to, what we are bringing you to understand. Understanding that this shape, this little spherical, and then jumps to physicality, shows the soul can expand, but it jumps to physicality because it found it. This means man still is afraid of losing life, afraid of the demise of the physical life, not knowing that you can jump into the field of the universe, and if the emotion and the pleasures of becoming back to the dimension of physicality is there, you'll manifest yourself the way, the place, and the time you left. Or you come back in the time and place and you see how much you jumped the time. In a way, so much has gone on while you've been away, but you come back and you see. When we come to, and as I said, we try to open the books more and more for you to understand. When we reach this point of understanding that you as knowledge seekers, sooner or later, have to face the reality of you are a passenger of space. You already are, because your machine, your vehicle, what you call the Earth, is already going at 1,600 kilometers an hour and is rotating everywhere. And is in the span of another system called the solar system. You got to learn. You got not to learn, but to understand that the dimension of physicality of the man has no limit. If becomes the dimension of the energy of the man, the soul of the man. Soul of one man can expand the whole of the universe. Soul of the man can expand the whole of the universe. If that soul understand that everything within it is for everything which has made it up to be. You got to understand how to transfer the energies into what we call the field and the cosmic rays and cosmic fields, that at the end of the point you can convert it back to a plasma of itself. And one day, when you comprehend this, you start becoming the travelers of the space. You start becoming those who can, just by thinking, by allowing the energy expansion of the inner cycle of man, you can make yourself visible, invisible, and be in two or three places at the same time. Those who manage to do this already go through it, and we see them. We call them daydreamers in some cases, because they see the what we call the interaction of the fields exactly the way man dreams at night. But now the soul expands and takes the man to another dimension, to another position. And then we see man only does not dream at night. Man dreams at day, which means the soul of the man can expand even the daytime. And this is what we are putting you through. But the soul of the man and the soul of physicality of the man and the physicality of the man have a specific way of combining combination, and it has shown itself to work in a certain ways. In the second session after the June, which we start for another maybe 3 to 6 months, we will run the sessions at night in different locations to make sure it's a nighttime for these people, more or less within an hour or two back in the front. And then we'll repeat the same thing during the daytime with the same people. And to see, to distinguish between the night dream and the day dream. When we put you through the systems, we allow you to go through a faster process than a daydream. You don't need to go to sleep. You don't need to go in a phase of the energy that allows you to dream and the rest of it. With a flick of a finger, we create condition that all of you start dreaming what they want, what you want to dream of. The whole structure of transmutation is part of it. Has to be process of what we consider as transportation, with transmutation as a back end of when you need it, or transmutation to be able to come into a transferable situation till the soul settles. Is this mine? Can I be here? Am I feeling comfortable? Now we come to a process of separation, understanding of the totality of the working of ourselves, that we are ready to go through that process. We are ready to go through that transfer and then transmutation. And then, do we prefer to transmute and then transfer, or do we prefer to transfer first and then transmute? For knowledge seekers, to understand the process is exactly what we see here. Exactly what we see is entangling with the dimension of the physicality and the soul of physicality and the dimension of the soul of the man. To what extent the knowledge seekers and the humanity in the coming time will come to understand this, we come to develop systems that can create of what we call existence, then we come to understand how life will change for all of us. And we will understand more about our own existence, where physicality does not need to be in charge all the time. Which means the man is getting the hand of the man and dragging it to be, to feel, you're here, you're not going anywhere. In the coming time, when we understand this separation, when we understand this position about ourselves, about our own dimension, man will start moving in a very easy way. And as I said, we start this process with two of the knowledge seekers to become the first people who can transmute and see how we can set our systems to bring them to the point that they can go from A to B, knowing that they can come back to A, and they can go between A and B without any fear, because they know they're in the safe hand. It's like a child move away from safe position they are, but knowing the mother is on the other end of the line and is there to catch them if they go wrong. And this is what we see in these graphs. What we learn, how much physical we are. You see here, if you understand it, just look at the height, the separation point of the green from the yellow. We want to dominate. We are afraid to leave our hand. We are afraid to leave our soul to work themselves. Then we can see much more in the time to come. One day, as I always say, you have no choice. The history is written for man, and man is just a player in this game. Somebody who's watching, and somebody who's playing, and somebody who is there to watch and play. In the next few weeks, as we prepare you to become the passengers of systems of a matter state, you'll be puzzled how much you already know about the physical state, about the soul state, about the soul of the man, and how you, as knowledge seekers, are there to bring that level of understanding to yourself and the others. We have to understand why, how, and the way we go, and have to understand we have to secure the physical life of the man before we even start this process. I hope I have opened your eyes to where you're going, because starts, we are back in demonstration, we are back from this week. And if you've got a team of knowledges who want to go through or to understand more, it always can be reasonable.